you and I and everyone else was kind of wondering, how is this COVID thing actually going to impact real estate? For a while, I thought all of our tenants were going to stop paying from one day to the next, and it was going to be a big disaster. So I put the acquisition train on hold for a little bit to focus on the current portfolio. But after going through COVID for a few months, there was virtually zero impact of any kind. So that gave me the confidence to go jump back in the market, look for stuff. But because real estate had shown that it was resilient to this kind of pandemic work from home disruption shock, the demand for multifamily ballooned even more.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your host, JP Albano with Lessons Around. On today's episode, I'm super excited to share with you. I've got my friend and business partner, Steffen van Doesburg, on the show. Steffen's going to talk about the lessons around some serious things that he went through as a person, as a husband, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And I'm so excited for you to hear this interview with Steffen. We're going to cover things around mindset. We're going to cover things on entrepreneurism. And we're also going to cover things about relationship with your spouse, with your wife, in this case for Steffen. Stay tuned for this episode. It's going to be awesome. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your host with Lessons Around, JP Albano. On today's show, I'm really excited. It is my first interview on this series. It is none other than my friend and business partner, Steffen. Steffen's going to talk about, a number of lessons around entrepreneurship, business, mindset, and the winning attitude to really kind of take what life gives you. Sometimes it's not always lemons. Is that a good thing? I feel like getting lemons is a bad thing, but getting exactly what you asked for and taking that and turning it around and making yourself better than you were before. So my guest, Steffen van Doesburg, is an example of someone who transitioned successfully from corporate career track to real estate focused entrepreneurial efforts. He's worked in consulting in the offshore oil and gas industry for 17 years. During that period, he started investing in real estate as a way to build wealth and alternative and additional forms of income. After realizing its benefits and cementing a passionate connection with real estate, what started off really as renting single-family homes really quickly transitioned into renovating old condos, doing value-add multifamily deals as an active sponsor, throwing off the golden shackles, and ultimately landing in a niche area of industrial real estate around which he is building a private equity platform for the second time. We'll get into the second time during the show today. Steffen is currently based in Houston with his wife, Sandy, and daughter, Isabella, after having grown up in the Netherlands, moving to Houston as a teenager, meeting his Colombian wife in London, and raising their daughter in Singapore. And as a 41-year-old is just starting to feel like he's figuring out life. He's also probably the greatest RV camping nerd among us. So a few things. I didn't know you were an RV camping nerd. We'll have to get into that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we love it a lot.
And we won't get into this show, but your story about how you met your wife in London is really an interesting story, perhaps for the next time. But Steffen, great to have you on the show here. How are you doing?
I'm very well, JP. Thank you for inviting me to be with you today to have this discussion. I'm very excited about it. I'm excited to share my story with you and your viewers and listeners. And I'm also just excited to be spending some time with you again.
Awesome. Yeah, it was funny. So Steffen, quick background on how we met. He and I, it was like blind date matched together. It was like a blind date matchup. He and I and two other gentlemen, we were four complete strangers. And we ended up getting put together and coached into purchasing our first multifamily asset. It was a 28 unit, 1970s build, value add property in Houston, Texas, in a kind of an up and coming trendy area called Independence Heights. And we bought the property for $2 million back in 2019. As our first deal, we did everything that you shouldn't do, which was syndicate the raise for that. And for those of my listeners that don't know what syndication is where you raise money from strangers for the purposes of getting into a business enterprise. So we were raising money from people to buy this apartment to improve the rents, increase the rents, and then sell it for a profit and make money for everybody. That's the idea. But four total strangers came together. We bought this thing. We raised money, and we ultimately did what we said we would do in about 3 years. Right, Stefan? We turned the property around. We hit our returns, and it was a great opportunity for us to kind of get our feet wet. And really, there was a lot of reasons why it shouldn't work, but it did. And I think part of the magic was the fact that you were on site, you were local, you and your wife. We had some hiccups with the third-party property management at the property, and you raised your hand, you rolled your sleeves, and you volunteered. I don't know, willingly, but you recognized it was vital. It was vital for the survival of the business to be able to do that. And you stepped into the role of property manager, and you basically ran the property for, was it 2 years? Essentially,
about a little under 3 years, probably. Yeah, ultimately.
Yeah. And so I'm sure there was a ton of lessons around that, but
indeed.
But you did that. And so it's funny, we only met once. We met when we toured the property, I think prior to purchasing it, like an inspection.
We did the unit walkthroughs.
And then we would do phone calls and video conference, phone calls really, not really video conferences. And we never met again. And we had the chance to kind of reconnect here a couple of weeks ago. We're buying a property in where the heck, Montrose in Houston. It's a big portfolio of units there. And we got to get together for lunch and we got to rekindle. It was like, two old friends from a long time. It was really, really great. And cool. I had the idea when you were telling me about, catching me up on what's been going on over the last couple of years. You shared your story with me about this business venture that went down and how it really became massively ugly. And what I walked away impressed was how you took what I'm going to call a shit sandwich. And I think most people would just sort of wallow in their self-pity and woe is me. But you didn't. You did, and then you turned it around, right? I feel like you used it for fuel, and I want to get into that. But I was really, really impressed with what you did, and very, very happy for what you've been able to create from that opportunity that was given to you. And I think, in hindsight, it didn't feel like an opportunity, but but it really was.
Yeah, so, it was, and it has been a very interesting journey over the last 12 months for sure. So I'm excited to dive into it and share a bit more.
So along those lines, why don't you tell the audience about your investing journey? I know you decided to build a business around industrial, commercial real estate, right? So explain what that is and explain, what kind of got you attracted to it and what you do in that space.
Yeah. My life and journey in real estate investing kind of started accidentally. Back in 2012. At that time, my wife and I had been briefly married. We were still living in kind of my bachelor pad townhouse. We had just had a daughter, and so we decided to go buy a proper single-family home with a yard and get out of the townhouse. And so we listed the townhouse for sale. That was the plan. But we got an unsolicited offer from someone who wanted to rent it from us. And we had not asked our broker to go look for rental offers. We really just wanted to sell it. So I get this rental offer. I gave it very little consideration because, like most people, the first image that kind of came to mind was, we're going to be getting calls at 1 a.m. about broken toilets and shitty tenants and trash. Right? So I was willing. I didn't want to entertain it at all. But my wife was like, no, Stefan, have a look at this and consider it closely. Because my wife, she had already owned rental property for years back in Colombia, where she is from. So she knew the deal. And she kind of encouraged me to consider it and look at it. And we were fortunate that we didn't actually need any of the proceeds from our townhouse to come up with the down payment for the second home we were going to buy. So I quickly kind of researched the market, figured out what we could rent it for, tried to understand what our reoccurring expenses would be. And lo and behold, there was some money to be made there. So I was like, okay, let's just try this. So that's how I kind of accidentally started in rental real estate. And then it got even sillier.
What I heard on that really is that your wife was right.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
That's going to be a topic for another podcast. I've been starting to notate how many freaking times my wife is right. And bottom line is they're always right. They're always right. Sorry.
No. That's fine. And so we rented that house, rented the townhouse, went under contract to buy that second single family home that we'd been dreaming of. And a week before we were going to close on that house, my boss came into my office and was like, Stefan, let's get serious about structuring that foreign assignment for you in Singapore. This is something I've been talking to my boss about for I don't know, a little under a year. We wanted to get out to Southeast Asia with our business and grow a presence there, but we really had no tangible plan as to when it would start or when we would do it. So he drops this bomb on me one day saying, hey, let's finalize this plan and get you out there. And I look at him and I'm like, dude, I'm under contract to close on a house on Friday. And he was like, yeah, that's why I'm coming to talk to you now. And it was Monday. So anyway, I went home and had a weird conversation with my wife that night saying, hey, we've got this fantastic work opportunity abroad. What do you think? Should we do it? And then what do we do in the context of this house that we're about to close on in a few days? And so we actually, we got a good deal on that house. So we decided to close on it, knowing full well that we would never live in it. We actually ended up living in it maybe for like 5 or 6 weeks, kind of squatting around the house. We brought 2 mattresses, a TV, and some cookware. Spent a few weeks living in the house, and then knowing that we were going to leave, we put that one up for rent. And right around that time in the Houston market, single family rentals were getting snapped up very quickly. So that was very well tenanted. And so then we moved to Singapore for 4 years, and within a matter of 6 months, I'd kind of accumulated 2 rental properties in a unconventional, unintended way, I would say. And after a few months of seeing those properties kind of perform, and indeed some extra cash dropping into my pocket every month, I was hooked immediately. It was one of the greatest things I could have imagined. But being abroad in Southeast Asia, neither my wife or I were comfortable at all trying to continue to acquire more property in Houston. We were too far away. We had no systems or relationships with managers and contractors in Houston. So I just put that all on pause, even though I just wet my whistle in the real estate or in the rental real estate world. So the 4 years we were living in Southeast Asia, I spent that time studying everything I could about real estate. I read every book, listened to every podcast. It was actually during that period that I stumbled across Jake and Gino and their show. And man, that was a fantastic source of information for me to learn.
What were some books you read?
Sorry?
What were some books that you read that stood out?
Actually, I was reading multifamily specific stuff, and I'll be honest with you. I think the books that are out there in multifamily are all subpar. Really, most of them, all of them that I read, and there's probably 4 or 5. The information's way too high level, very cursory. You know, now that you and I have owned and operated some buildings, and now that I think back on the books that have been written about it, I'm like, it's good starter material for sure. Read it and absorb it, but I found it to contribute very little actually.
Yep.
So what I learned the most was, or what I learned the most from was the podcasts. Those were supreme. So I spent that 4 years kind of studying and priming myself for when we would move back to Houston, because I knew I wanted to hit the ground running and continue to acquire some properties.
Right.
So my first focus, like everyone else, was let's go flip a house. So I was kind of looking for single family homes to flip. Found some good opportunities, but ultimately I realized, and I was honest with myself enough, that I was afraid about the uncertainty around doing a full gut rehab on a single family house. I didn't have any friends that were contractors that I could really trust to do the work. There was too many unknowns for me there. So, but I still wanted to do something. And that kind of led me to looking at condominiums. Those were smaller. And what clicked there was that I was only responsible for the interiors. The exteriors is handled by the HOA and that management company. So versus the single family home flips, that kind of de-risked and eliminated a lot of my concerns about doing deep, heavy renovations, because I had no experience doing that whatsoever. So we got into the condos, bought the first one. That was a slam dunk. We renovated it the way we wanted to, remained within the budget, rented it out for exactly the market rate that I thought we could, and we were making money. And that was a big confidence boost for me, because this was actually the first property that we bought with the sole intent of it being an investment property.
Sure.
The other 2 were kind of were primary homes for my wife and I before that we then rented out later. So it gave me a lot of confidence because we nailed it. Like I read the market right. We did the right kind of interior renovation on the place. And so then we did another one. We bought another condo in that same complex. And then 6 months later, we did a third acquisition of a condominium in that same community. All of them were fantastic projects, loved it. And as we were going along, my passion for real estate just continued to grow. But I also, after having those two single family rentals and those 3 condos now on stream, and kind of 5 properties in the portfolio, I quickly realized that buying real estate one property at a time was going to be a very painfully slow path to build a substantial portfolio of assets. So of course, then I started thinking about multifamily. That's kind of the next natural stepping stone once you kind of start your real estate journey. And because of all of the podcast listening and multifamily research I had done when I was living in Singapore, I kind of had the understanding that I needed and a little bit of the knowledge to start really delving into that. And so this was kind of right at the end of 19. I kind of promised myself no more single family, no more condos. Let's try to get into multifamily. And it was only a few months later, as we went into 19, that I met you and our other two partners on that first 28 unit deal. And that really kind of kickstarted everything. We were fortunate, JP, you and I, to have been introduced to each other by that other capital group here in Houston. And I stayed in touch with them outside of that deal we did. And I invested in some of their other projects and was fortunate enough to be involved with some of those. So kind of during 18 and 19, that's when my multifamily journey started. Acquired and was involved with 3 acquisitions for a total of, I think it was 215 doors total. So I was riding high. I was really happy. I had made the conscious decision to start acquiring multifamily, and I did. I was in it. But at the same time, I was still working a very heavy full-time job. And so I was at the point where I was like, okay, this real estate is really what I want to be doing. This is where my passion is. I'm seemingly good at it.
And it worked. Like you could make money doing it. It actually worked.
Sure. Yeah. Every project I'd done up to that point, all the multifamily deals, it was working, and I understood why it was working. And I was passionate about it. So I really wanted to find a way to transition out of my corporate life. Although that would take not many more years, but several more years to accomplish. But so anyway, coming from 19 into 2020, I was hot on the warpath to find more multifamily deals to acquire. But then COVID hit all of a sudden, and I kind of put the brakes on looking for more stuff for a little while to more focus on the existing portfolio, because you and I and everyone else was kind of wondering, how is this COVID thing actually going to impact real estate? For a while, I thought all of our tenants were going to stop paying from one day to the next, and it was going to be a big disaster. So I put the acquisition train on hold for a little bit to focus on the current portfolio. But after going through COVID for a few months, there was virtually zero impact of any kind. So that gave me the confidence to go jump back in the market, look for stuff. But because real estate had shown that it was resilient to this kind of pandemic work from home disruption shock, the demand for multifamily ballooned even more. So in 2020, all the stuff I was looking at, it was near impossible to find any property or any deal that was appropriately priced, had some real value add potential left on the bone for us as the incoming buyers. Everything was overpriced. And not only that, the competition to acquire the property, even if it was an off-market deal, there'd be 25 bidders. It was an impossible environment. So really out of desperation and in the hunt for better yield, I started looking at every other sector of real estate. I was underwriting shopping plazas. I even got pretty far down the rabbit hole on doing a hotel to multifamily conversion. There was this extended stay hotel suites place out by the airport that was going to work. So I was diving into that. I was just poking around everywhere trying to figure out, okay, multifamily is overvalued now or too expensive for my liking. What else can I get into? And it was during that time that I kind of stumbled into a niche area of industrial real estate by way of having some kind of inadvertent, just by chance conversation with one of my colleagues at work. And so I started learning more about this little niche, which is today referred to as industrial outdoor storage. These are low coverage industrial properties, meaning they're industrial properties, but they don't have a large format warehouse or distribution center type of building on it. These are properties where maybe there's a small office, small maintenance building, maybe a small little warehouse, but the main feature is the outdoor storage space. And so these are not sexy properties by any means. These are the basic lay down yards, contractor yards. They're generally not well maintained. They're not always in the best parts of town. Sure. But as I kept digging, it quickly hit me in the face that the investment community was not really looking at this at all. And it was far from being institutionalized or any institutional money even bothering to look at this little niche. And so then it started to click. I was like, okay, this is where we need to go look. And so referring back to my buddy from work at the time, he was also kind of exploring a real estate entrepreneur journey and was looking for a way to exit his corporate career as well. And he had flipped a house the year before. And so him and I were always talking about real estate at work constantly. And so we decided to partner together with another one of his friends to really go after these low coverage industrial properties with some intent. And so we started a company, we started our partnership, and we were very fortunate actually that very early on in our evolution, as we were just going around raising money for some of the deals we were trying to close at the time, we sat with a founder of a family office out of Austin, and he loved what we were doing so much.
What's a family office? I mean,
a family office. That's a good question. I think where we sit today, the word family office is hijacked and abused. I mean, you could say right now you have a family office. I have a family office, but that's BS. But the real or my understanding of what a proper family office is an individual or a family who throughout their lives and through their professional and business journey have been able to accumulate substantial wealth by way of selling a business or continuing to buy more businesses. And it's gotten to the point where the capital base for that individual or for that family is so large that they can afford to go hire their own investment managers and their own team of asset managers. And they can basically build an investment platform business around their own personal capital. Yep. That's my understanding of what a family office should be. So we meet this family office out of Austin. Things quickly clicked between us. There was good chemistry with the people on their team and on our team. They loved the idea. So because we wanted to move fast and go big, we decided to bring them into our company as another general partner. And so we were well capitalized very early on in our evolution. And this was all kind of late 2020 going into early 2021. So we hit the ground running. And within the last 6 months of 2021, we bought 4 industrial properties for a total of 32 acres. And then it was just an incredible experience, JP. Like the team we created.
You're living the dream. I mean, I'm on the other side, building a real estate business, looking for the sugar daddy, right? The family office that just wants to fund you. And you had seemingly found the thing, right? Because that's usually in the beginning stages, the part that's holding you back from growing your business is that capital or access to capital, ready to go and be on board with what you're doing. Find a deal, I'll fund it. Find a deal, I'll fund it, right?
100%.
So, it's phenomenal that you were in a position to identify those people and strike up a partnership and be able to go down and hit things running. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. And so once we formalized that partnership and we found our big capital partner, that's when all the ingredients were in place for me to exit my corporate career. And I swiftly did so. Sure. And it was truly one of the best days of my life. Yeah. And that entire initial journey with my partners of starting that business and doing that first generation of deals, like you said, I really was living my dream every single day. And we can dive into this more later, but ironically, my professional life was the best it had ever been. I was supremely happy. But in my personal life, the fact that I had exited my corporate career and was diving into this entrepreneurial journey caused massive friction with my wife.
Well, let's go into that.
Because right now?
Yeah, there's lessons around that, right? Like what's the friction that happened? For that.
Primarily what it came down to is, first of all, it's important to know that my wife was very supportive of my entrepreneurial itch and my want to build a business. So that was not the issue. What it really came down to is that I left my corporate job before she wanted me to. She was fine with me leaving that job eventually, but in her mind, she really wanted to see our business take off more, become more mature, more robust, and then have the confidence to exit my nice juicy paycheck job. But obviously, as you and I know, as of people who are trying to do this, you can't do both at the same time. So the fact that we had the business spun up a little bit and we had a capital partner, that was enough for me to say, oh my God, this is going to be the easiest corporate career to entrepreneurial transition that there could ever be. So from my perspective, it was de-risked and perfectly set up. because I was able to go from the good corporate paycheck to our partnership, where we were fortunate that we had a little bit of funding available to pay ourselves, nominal salary. So I was going from a paycheck to another paycheck. So from my perspective, there were zero problems. But the way my wife saw it is we went from paycheck to paycheck, and there was big question marks.
Yeah, those that are listening, that Steffan's holding his hand up and just showing one level, and then the
Previous pay,
being
current pay.
significantly lower than the other hand level.
Yeah. And so that's what really kind of exploded or led to the bomb exploding, was that I just pulled the Band-Aid off and I left. I resigned from my job, and it put my wife into a state of shock, honestly. And I understand why. It's not an easy thing to contemplate. And really, when I did it, I really had psyched myself up to the point that I was a little bit crazy, a little bit maniacal. I wanted this so bad, and I was not.
You saw failure was not an option for you.
Exactly.
That's what it is. So you're like, what are you talking about, honey? Like, this is going to work. I know you don't think it will be, but I know this is going to work.
Yeah.
You're completely beyond 100% convinced it's going to work.
Yeah.
And probably the challenge came in. It's like, well, she's not on the same level as you are with that.
Exactly.
In reality, you're in like, I'm going to effing make everything work no matter what comes my way.
Yeah. So so when I left, and the fact that I left, or before I actually left, I knew that this was going to cause a lot of problems in my relationship with my wife. I knew it. And in speaking to my wife about it, she was like, just wait a few more months, wait a few more months. And I was like, there's never going to be a good time to do this. It's always going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be equally scary if we do it tomorrow or 8 months from now. It won't matter. So I decided to actually be a little bit selfish, JP. And I was like, I'm going to do this now. I know that now the time is right. I know that we have all the ingredients in place to actually build something successful. And this is one of those rare instances where I have to put my feelings, my goals, and my wants ahead of what my wife's opinions were about what I was trying to do. So I just punched right through that thing. And the business was working, but my relationship suffered severely. There was probably a good 7-month period where my wife and I did not talk to each other at all. I mean, just the bare minimum amount of communication that we needed to run a household together and raise our daughter. But that was one of the most miserable periods of my entire life. And what I could never wrap my head around, even to this day, is how could I find myself in this position where I had this dream company with wonderful partners and a great team, and I was doing real estate deals, and I was living that dream, and it was working, and it was real for me. And at the same time, my marriage is crumbling apart every day. I couldn't reconcile how I got to that point where I had what I wanted, but then I was also losing something that I wanted also, which was my marriage.
You were paying a price for it.
Yeah, that was a heavy tax, man. I will tell you. So actually, the way our relationship navigated its way out of it and became much healthier was actually, and I now need to revert back to the first partnership that we've been talking about. So we 2021 was a great success. We had that initial portfolio in place. We spent the first part of 2022 kind of implementing all of our value add strategies, doing all the upgrades and the lease ups and whatever on that existing portfolio. And then transitioning into spring, early summer last year, unfortunately, things started falling out of alignment within our partnership. And we can dive into that in more detail later, but that ultimately led in me having to leave the company. The company that I was madly in love with, and all of my partners who I just enjoyed being around and working with every day so much, it was gone, literally from one day to the next. And that was heavy. That was very, very heavy for me. And what had me very worried, what I was most scared about, is I knew that I could digest the fact that I wasn't in my company anymore. What I was worried about is now my wife was going to be like, see, I told you, you should have stayed at your corporate job. This would have never happened. Look where you are now. Now you don't even have the business. And so I was actually afraid to tell my wife for like a couple hours. I was like, how do I talk to her about this? How do I tell her this? Because this is all the ammo she's been looking for the last 4 years to convince me not to do this. But what was absolutely magic, JP, is as this was all happening and I was exiting the business, my wife was so supportive. She could see how hard I'd been crushed and what it had done to me, it was like automatic. She went into ultra supportive, loving wife mode instantly. And oh man, that was magic. I mean, that's what I needed to start kind of pulling myself out of this little mental hole of misery that I'd found myself in because I had to leave my last company.
Well, let's talk about that. How did it affect you? Because, you went from, it sounds like having basically best friends at work
Yeah.
to having to leave the job,
Yeah.
then having to deal with the drama at home and the damage, the collateral damage that was going to potentially cause with you and your wife. But
Yeah.
you've married an amazing woman, so she helps be your number one supporter, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But how else did it affect you?
Let's see. Definitely heavy depression crept in.
Are you prone to depression? You always been a guy?
No, I would not say so. Looking back on my life, I've not been overly emotional or prone to depression. I do remember in my college years, I had some periods there where that was proper depression. Probably, I was lonely by myself. You're in college; it's just a weird place. So I had some pockets of tough times there mentally. And that's why when this happened again last summer, I was like, oh, that's that feeling again. I know it. That's what depression is. It's just this heavy blanket that just is over your mind and your body, and it's all consuming, and it's distracting. So that happened. Like I was very sad. I did a lot of crying, actually. Like I was always crying. I was sad. I was hurt, depressed. I mean, just think of it. I'd experienced a major loss in my life. I mean, having to leave the company was like my child getting kidnapped, never to be seen again. Like it was that personal. It was that intense. It was like my heart getting ripped out. It was, people tend to say, oh, don't take it personal. It's just business. Dude, bullshit. There is nothing more personal than the business that you're engaging in. Like
it is your baby. You are super passionate about. You think about it. You dream about it. You're constantly working on ways to improve it and grow it and do all the things, nurture it. Right? You can't just completely disassociate yourself unless you're a sociopath. Yeah. But at what point did you make the inflection from spending however much time you were in depressed misery to having that moment where you're like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore? What did that look like? And what did it look like? And how did you start to pull yourself back up? What were some lessons around that?
Yeah. So the inflection point happened immediately. As soon as this experience happened and I started having these difficult feelings and just this sadness, I knew immediately I had to put some kind of program in place to manage my mental game. Because I've been working on my self-awareness for years and years. So I knew, and I could feel, and I could, when thinking about my thoughts or analyzing what my thoughts were, I knew that I had to start working to keep my head above water, so to speak, immediately. So I think after I left the company, I really was deeply heartbroken for a while. So it was probably a couple of weeks where my wife was putting no pressure on me to go figure out another job or what we were going to do. She was just letting me have my time, which actually, that was a nice couple of weeks. Like my wife and I would go to the driving range at 10:30 on a Wednesday. We'd come home, make love, have lunch. Then I go pick my daughter up from school. It was like I had a small period there where I kind of got to see what it was like to be retired. Yeah. And I actually did not like it whatsoever. I
feel like you can have pockets of it, like these bursts of it, to decompress a little bit. But then, like, as men, I feel like we're wired to work on something, to do something, to have something to work on, build, whatever, right? Yeah. I'm in agreement with you on that, Steffan.
Yeah. And so early. So I actually told my wife, I was like, please pay attention to any subtle changes in my behavior or anything that I do. And I told her, I'm like, I'm going through this depression, this difficulty. I won't be able to see it. So please let me know if you see anything, so I can feed that back to myself and learn from it. But so because I was having these overwhelming feelings every day, I instantly started focusing on making sure I was exercising enough, and that I was generally keeping my mind productive with interesting things that I enjoyed. So yeah, to your question about the inflection point, it started almost immediately. But throughout that period, though, I will say that it made me realize how easy it is actually for people after had going through hardship or heartbreak to have that instance become a permanent part of their identity, and to kind of hide behind the comfort of being hurt.
Being the victim.
Yeah, it's you can easily put yourself in that box and stay there for as long as you want or not.
Well, you said your wife was very supportive of you. She gave you your space, right? So
Yeah,
if you're that person, you'd be like, oh, look at this. I have this kind of cushy, you work on yourself time to do that,
yeah.
right? Which you're right. I think a lot of people could take advantage of that. And yes, I think it's healthy to have that time, but there's also health in realizing, okay, I don't want to do that. I'm ready for the next chapter now. What happens next?
Yeah, for sure. So just as a result of a practical matter, in order for me to leave the last company, we had a fair amount of paperwork that we had to create and I had to sign off on. So that process took the rest of the summer, basically. So I had the summer. The point I forgot to make is while that documentation was still pending, I was technically still part of the company and under a non-compete. So I could not keep going after this niche asset class. So I was forced to kind of sit on my thumbs for 3-4 months. I used that as my healing time. I used that as my time to see what it was like to be retired. But then as soon as kind of the exit paperwork had been finalized, I think it was within a matter of weeks, I was out there making offers again on things. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to think back, like what my mindset was or what I was doing mentally to keep me pushing forward. I think it was just having that right balance of my wife giving me space to digest, but I'm also the kind of person who puts a lot of pressure on myself. So I knew that so I was not going to be that person who left their corporate job, started an entrepreneurial endeavor, had that crap out, and then be that fucking loser who goes back to the corporate job. That door had shut. I was not going, like, that was my greatest fear in life at that point in time, was having to go throw my resume back on the street and try to get some high-paying corporate job. I blocked that out as an option immediately. That was just not even on the table for me. So the only other option then was go build another company, go look for more deals and go find more capital partners. So I had to, and it was painful because myself and my other team at that time, we had just gone through that painful phase of figuring out a strategy, becoming capitalized, getting the deals closed, having that initial starting base portfolio that can be the showcase platform for future business growth. I had just lost that all. And now I had to go back right to step number one and go rebuild it all. So that was end of the summer is when I started, kind of the end of the summer last year is when I started the business rebuilding. I was under contract on 2 deals. Neither of those I was able to close due to material stuff I found during the due diligence phase. So that was kind of a setback because I was very excited to be able to say to myself, okay, you had to leave the company, you had a period of loss and suffering, and boom, you're already under contract. Like I would have had this fantastic velocity in the recovery of my life, so to speak. But the first deal crapped out, second deal crapped out. So the remaining portion of 2022, I was not able to get anything done. First quarter of this year, wasn't able to close the deal. But during that time, the longer it took for me to get a deal that was closable, my wife was also kind of breathing down my neck. Like, hey, Steffan, it's been a year now since you've had any kind of income and since you left your last company. Maybe we should start thinking about getting it going again. But luckily, I was always able to signal to her enough tangible action on the real estate side that I could convince her to be like, hey, give me 2 more months. If this closes, we're
almost there. We're almost there.
I just want to try one more time, babe.
Yep.
So end of last year, early this year, I'm looking for deals. I'm raising money. And again, I was extremely fortunate to have been introduced to a potential capital partner who, as literally just a few weeks ago, we signed, we formalized another partnership. Yeah, it was actually that morning that I met you again, and we had lunch. That's the morning that kind of everything was finalized. All the funding hit the bank. Um, so I guess what's beautiful about the whole thing is, I got kicked in the teeth, had to leave my last business, went through a very difficult time mentally where I had days where I felt lost. I had no idea how I was going to get off center. I had no idea what the next step forward had to be, but I kept plugging along. And literally a year after leaving my last company, I've got the infrastructure and bones of another investment platform coming together right now as we speak. I also have a deal under contract that's going to close in a little under a month. And this one will close. There's nothing funky that's popped up in due diligence. So in a nutshell, a year after leaving the last business, I'm back to closing deal number one about exactly a year later. So I'm actually kind of proud of myself. A year is a very, very long time, especially when you're sitting idly by. It feels like an ocean of time that'll never end.
A year is a long time. One of the habits I think I have is I grossly underestimate how long things will take.
Yeah.
And I am way too optimistic on how long things should take, if that makes sense. I'm trying to paint a picture for both sides there. So I hear you. A year is feels like a freaking long time.
Yeah.
But in listening to your story, I feel like the obvious answer to this question is a yes. But do you feel stronger? Do you feel like better? Like, thank you, guys. I'm now a more awesome version of who I was a year ago.
100%. Yeah. Although there was days where it was impossible to see how anything better could ever come.
No, sure, right? But you've come out of that trough, right? And you're on the other end of that, right?
Yeah.
Now here you are. We call you on top of the mountain, the hilltop there, and you're able to kind of look back and be like, "Wow, that was pretty shitty," but it looks pretty good from here. And man, I was, I feel like, and you tell me if this resonates or not, or if you feel this way. I think one of the last conversations we had before we left was, you should consider internally forgiving or thanking your old partners for basically the opportunity. Yeah, no one wants that. No one wants to have to go through all of that shit you went through.
Yeah.
But as a result of it, I can probably pick out a handful of things that are probably better off for you right now. You don't have partners, which it's great having partners, by the way. Like, I love having a partner or someone to like riff ideas off of. It's valuable. But from an economic standpoint, like, you're sharing your deals with yourself and maybe your capital source, perhaps. Maybe you're making out better financially than you were before. Maybe you can take the lessons that you learned in building that business the first time, and you got things done faster the second time because you knew the routes you were going to take.
Yeah. I mean, despite the troublesome journey, the amount of learning I did was incredible. And actually, when you told me, JP, that I should bless my past partners, that was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. And you're 200% correct. Because something better did come from it. Like, really, truly, it did. So I am grateful in a way that what happened did happen.
It also makes your relationship with your wife better, stronger too. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. And I want to get back to that. It's because I was so sad. She, like I said, she automatically stepped into being hyper supportive. So did my mom. Both of those women in my life helped me so much by just flooding me with encouraging words and being supportive. So going through that hardship actually brought my wife and I much closer together. After what I already explained to you was a very weird year where she hated me for leaving my job, and we were in a very bad place with our marriage, to be truthful. So this hardship brought us very close. And what was also nice, because I wasn't actively working, I got to spend so much time with my wife every day. And man, we should all do more of that. It's hard to accomplish, right? In the context of real life and everyone's daily routines. But I was given that gift of having, months and months of idle time. And I used that, and I spent that with my wife. And that made her happy. That made me happy. We grew much closer together because of this. So even though I'm grateful that I've got another business now and I've got a new set of partners that I really enjoy working with, I'm even more grateful that there's all this turbulence from my entrepreneurial journey brought my marriage to a place where it's better than ever. That's the real win here, JP.
Now you've got both. Remember in the beginning, you were saying you had the great job and now the crappy marriage.
Yeah.
You've improved the marriage. You've grown the marriage, and it allowed you to have the place to have the awesome job part. So you've got both pieces.
Yeah. Now I just need to keep both of those pieces on the rails long enough, and and we'll finally have it figured out, man.
That's beautiful, Steffan. So I feel like we're at the point in the show here where we can kind of highlight some of the distilled down versions, the lessons around this journey that you went through, right? So if you can outline a small handful of things, I feel like there's a lot of elements around mindset in your story here. Many instances of mindset, maybe bits of kind of spirituality, a little bit, and then obviously the flights of entrepreneurialism. But why don't you call out for me, 3 or 4 or so key takeaways of lessons that are around this experience for you?
The most important one is mindset and controlling the quality of your thoughts. Even before I went through my little professional breakup, I for years I'd already been focusing on developing my self-awareness, and for years I'd been focusing on controlling the narrative in my head to make sure that it's healthy. And for years I'd been spending time implanting positive thoughts into my mind regularly. So when I had this bad experience, I knew that it was my mind that was going to, or me being aware of and controlling my mind was going to be what was going to help me kind of get my life back on track and get happier, get to a healthier place mentally. I knew that came down 100% to what I decided to do with my head and my thoughts there. So just as an overarching lesson for everyone and for any situation is that you really need to start working, if you've not already, start today on identifying when those negative thoughts fester in your mind and substitute it with something else. You have to start this immediately because your life will never be as full and your life will never go the way you want it to if you do not control the quality of your thoughts. And years ago when I kind of started this practice, and for any of your listeners or viewers who are thinking of trying to get into this themselves, at first it will feel very weird. But next time you're in a car, for instance, on a long drive, pay attention to your own thoughts. And it's surprising to see how most people's internal natural narrative is very negative. It's always about some fear, some uncertainty, some hardship from the past, that their entire mental psyche, all of their brain energy is focused only on that. Not their fault. That's like a lot of that is innate to how our brains are structured, right? Our brains are there to defend us and keep us alive. Yeah. But that bias towards the downside and that natural negativity that floats through our brains, if you don't control it, it consumes everything. And up until the day that I kind of became aware of this and started trying to control my own thought narrative, I was slapped in the face realizing that, oh yeah, like I think about a lot of negative stuff all day long, every day. But once once it clicks and you realize like, wow, I can use all this brain space actually to just trick myself and start to say positive things and think positive things when I'm having negative feelings.
You're also going to vibrate and attract that into your life too.
Yeah. And this all ties back to energy. Like negative thoughts equals negative energy. Positive thoughts equals positive, lighthearted, good, healthy energy. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a big topic to unpack, JP. But just to say it succinctly, you have to control your thought narrative, and you have to fill it with positive thoughts and ideas, because they will shape what your future life becomes. There's that fantastic saying that your current life is a reflection of your past thoughts.
That's right.
It's 100% true. I've felt it in my life. I've seen, now that I've been doing this for long enough, my life has changed in accordance with how I've thought about things and how I put plans in my own head, and details of what I wanted the future to look like. it's happened to me. The whole entrepreneurial transition, getting into multifamily, those were all decisions in my head that I then started thinking maniacally about every day, all day long. And it happened.
You take it for granted, but I think for a lot of people, most people don't do a mid-career shift, right? Change. People don't just go like, I'm in oil and gas one day, I'm going to become a real estate investor. I'm going to buy apartments. Oh, now I'm going to buy industrial. I'm going to start my own business. Those are like massive changes into a life. And I don't think people understand or are aware of like how anyone can do this if you get into the right mental space to believe that you can.
Yeah. It's literally step number one, in my opinion, in any entrepreneurial journey, or not even entrepreneurship. Forget about that. It's step number one in trying to drive change in any area of life where you're seeking to. Relationships, it doesn't matter. Like just having that positive mindset, trying to always have a positive energy with you. It's going to holistically change your life for the better across the entire spectrum.
That's right. And now give us one lesson around entrepreneurship.
A lesson around entrepreneurship. I think so. Let's tie that to skills, because I went to business school, and there's always a lot of discussion, formally and casually, about what skills do you need to be an entrepreneur. I mean,
right?
The number one thing I can think of is having the ability to figure it out. And really what that means, sorry?
Problem solving,
yeah. But also not being afraid to go solve it or to go figure it out. Like you literally have to pick up the phone, start writing those emails, start having those conversations, whatever it is you have to do, you have to figure it out. Especially when you're kind of, jumping into this by yourself, there is no one else. You have to go figure that out. So I see a lot of value in having or developing over your life a fairly generalist skill set. And I've been fortunate that throughout my career and different things I've gotten to work on, I've ended up with a pretty broad-based skill set. I always like to say that I know a little bit about everything, but nothing in particular. Yep. And for entrepreneurship, that's come in very handy for me. So I would say the ability to just figure it out, but also having the confidence and not being afraid of the unknown that comes along with having to figure it out.
Embrace the unknown, because everything is unknown.
Exactly. And so once you kind of start plowing through, you'll start to see that it's all just a function of effort. You have to just pick up the phone, make that call, write that email, go to that meeting, just go figure it out. It's that simple.
It is. Steffan, I think we're coming up on time here, but
okay.
This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and being, I'll say, vulnerable, right? Admitting your faults or things that I think most men are uncomfortable talking about. So thank you for doing that. How can people get a hold of you?
Send me an email. My email address is steffan@vd-co.com. Feel free to reach out about anything anyone wants to talk about. I'm not only here with JP, but I make it a point in my life to have open and candid and vulnerable discussions when possible. And I'm here to share and learn from anyone else who wants to talk to me.
That's right. Thank you again, Steffan. Any parting words?
Parting words. I better make this good, huh? Let me see. It's always darkest before the dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And JP, thank you so much for having me on your show today. It was great to spend some more time with you and to share with your listeners and viewers. Thank you for the opportunity. And it was good to see you, buddy.
Likewise.
And I hope your deal in Montrose works out.
It will. It will work out phenomenally. Awesome stuff. So thank you, Steffan. Have a great day.
You too, JP. Take care, man.
Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. I really appreciate your support. Please go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time.